I forget if we did that for prayer or not.
We did not.
Use the gun. Oh, okay then. Good luck with
You're
that.
gonna have to figure it out.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That was like a sexy...
You mean Jar Jar? I believe you mean Jar Jar Binks.
You're gonna have to catch me when I faint.
But John's like, I can't escalate this. I need to go somewhere else.
I'm turning him into like a southern lady. Jar Jar is like a southern lady.
You're gonna need to pass me that mint julep, honey.
You're gonna need to protect the institution of slavery.
Oh my god. I mean, the Gungans...
Now, the question is, which part of that is the most racist?
Welcome to ScapeChatz. This is episode 47. I'm Alan, and I'm joined by that last-minute, proposal-ruining Frelnick, Magellan. This week, we watched Season 4, Episode 22 of Farscape, Bad Timing, which was the series finale. It was written by David Kemper, directed by Andrew Prouse, and it aired March 21st, 2003, in the U.S. Here we are, Magellan.
Here we are.
We did it. We did it? Do I feel good about this? Do I feel terrible? I don't even know.
I don't know what we did, and I don't know how I feel about what we did with this episode.
With this show?
Yeah.
It's so you made the point to me, I think the last time that we hung out.
The times together.
Mental, this is the episode. You know that.
I know. One time I was at a get together with some improv people at college, and I started singing that song towards the end of the year, and literally people repeated and kept singing that song for the next 15 minutes.
Oh, geez.
It got crazy. I was hoping that would start now, but there's not quite enough of us here, is there?
Well, yeah, and I also don't remember the next part of it or whatever.
It's just
because it has like a breakdown.
Canon, my boy.
Oh, you're talking about that one. That one. I thought you were talking about the graduation song by Vitamin C.
I am, but I don't know the part where it breaks down, so I just sing Pachelbel's Canon.
I prefer Gymnopedie-C. another classic piece of classical music. Speaking of classics, this episode was a lot. So we were talking at one point about how Farscape tends to do this thing where the sort of big three-parter at the end, the second to last and third to last and fourth to last episodes of the season are this big adventure, and We're So Screwed absolutely was that. And then the season finale is often a decompression, a moment to breathe, a moment to think and to reflect, and then a cliffhanger. Yep. The problem is that this was the series finale. That's my issue here.
Right. I mean, when we talk about the ending, I think we can have a more broadly spanning conversation about if this is at all a proper way to end a show. But everything leading up to literally the final 30 seconds feels like a series finale.
Yeah, definitely. Because basically, at the end of We're So Screwed, everyone seems like they're okay. But we find out that at the beginning of this episode... Well, actually, this episode starts interestingly because it begins with the first shot of the show, which I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shot of somebody standing on a beach on Earth, presumably where John Crichton first launched the Farscape project and that whole thing. Which, I mean, is a pretty classic series finale. We're going to show the first shot of the show again. And that's definitely pretty subtle because that was many years ago. And over a year and a half ago for us, but I have a picture of it. I could actually just make it the episode thumbnail. I think that'd be pretty cute.
That'd be cool.
Although there's a lot of shots in this episode that are pretty... the John standing in front of the flag is another really good one, but y'all will see that. But that happens, and then it's followed by a flash of several scenes from the whole show. Or rather, that's that's the...
That's the previously
Is that what's
on.
first, or is it the sunset that's first? Yeah. The previously on, I joked before we hit play. I was like, it's going to be it's going to say previously on and then show the whole show. I was right. I was exactly right.
You're 100%
right. They showed a couple frames from every single episode of the show, which I thought was great. And it was really fun. I was cheering during that part, being like, there's Strappa. There's the first time we saw Braca. There's more Strappa.
There's that weird alien from the episode.
The Marty and Me episode.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Just like, here, there's Jewel. There's Zahn. And then, like, you know, all of these things. Here's the first Francesca Buller. It was like a really intense moment of like nostalgia. Just like, wow, here's great. Everything laid out for us. And then we get into the kind of situation with this episode, which is Scorpius is like, John, your infantile obsession with betrayal is misplaced. And then there's that cool, like, did he really say that moment where John is recalling to Aaron what Scorpius said to him, and she's in disbelief. And then it's also revealed that John is telling that story to Dargo, who's in disbelief at how Aaron reacted. Yep. And also Aaron is telling the story to Chiana, who's also like, did he say that? It's like everyone is just in several different lines of communication.
So this is a Kemper script. It's a really playful and efficient way to put the characters exactly where they need to be, tell the bare minimum of story to set this episode up without getting bogged down. I think a consistent strength of Farscape has been that its episodes are pretty good about starting where they're supposed to start in terms of the narrative action. And this episode definitely has that, because we could have belabored the whole part about like getting back on Moya, and then Scorpius leaves and goes to the command carrier and blah, blah, blah. Like, we could have spent a whole half an episode on setting up this moment, but instead we move it really quickly and intercut stories being told with the story that's happening, but that's also a story that's being told, so that we kind of get to have 3 layers of character setup and conversation at once to just fully compress the narrative.
It's incredibly efficient and like economically told, which I think is the whole episode also, because I didn't feel like there was a single wasted scene in this. Like, everything was about getting to the point where John needs to, you know, leave Earth behind and make that decision. And so the way that we get there is so it involves Braca and some Scarens and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Going on.
Basically, so this I'm a little unclear about. Somehow the Scarens find out where Earth is, I guess.
Yeah, you were like, the first thing that we said was like, oh, this is a race against time, but it's like, wait, why do the Scarens know where Earth is? When did they find that out?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe somebody told them. I don't know. Anyway, we just know that somehow the Scarens probably know where Earth is, and they're probably going there because, flashback to We're So Screwed, when John saw the flowers, he was like, oh yeah, we got stuff like this growing on Earth. And we just blew up their flowers. So the Scarens are going to Earth because they want smart people flowers. And also because they want to take revenge on John Crichton for being destructive.
No, he says it's hummingbird feet, and then they're mad at him and they want to go to Earth for that, and because he is a terrorist.
Right. So they say that, and John's kind of skeptical about whether they actually know where Earth is and if they're going to go. And we start the episode at the point where Braca has taken control of the Peacekeeper command carrier because he overthrew Greza in the last episode in a very cool way. Super great. And Braca is basically sitting there saying, like, if you try to leave, I'm going to shoot you with my guns. And Scorpius is in another little thing saying, hey, John, let's talk this out. The only way that you're going to protect Earth is by making a deal with the Peacekeepers, allying yourself with us so that the Scarens will get scared away from Earth. Or at the very least, you'll have the firepower necessary to repel them. It's like, come on, be cool. And John's like,
warmonger.
No, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to make a deal with the Peacekeepers. That's so against everything that I want to do right now. So we have the conversation scene, and kind of, I didn't know how I felt about this kind of metaphor, very thinly veiled metaphor, is they use the word commitment a few times here. So Scorpius is like, make a decision, John. You have nothing to fear from this commitment. And then John's like, talking to Aaron, it's a big commitment, either one. And then Aaron's like, so you're afraid of commitment. And then it cuts to Dargo, and he's like, hey, wait a minute. Did she hesitate like that, or was that just you doing that now? And so it's kind of a fun, like very Farscape, but also super cheesy interweaving of John having to make a choice about saving Earth from evil lizard aliens with like whether or not John's gonna marry this lady. And yeah, so that's something. I didn't know how I feel about that. How did you feel about that, the commitment thing?
Well, part of it is that his whole thing in this episode is he's learning to commit to something, because he's been being pulled so much in this season between the Scarens and the Peacekeepers. And not to say that like the Scarens are at any point going to convince him, but it's more like he's realizing that they're both bad. But you can't just run forever. Like, you have to do something about this conflict because you have the power to change things. Mm-hmm. And so he has to commit and say, no, not only will I not work for either of you, I need to stop one of you, and then y'all are going to just fight it out. Because that's where this arc takes him at the end of this episode, is the realization of, like, you're not going to go to my home planet, but you all can do whatever the heck you want with yourselves. Yeah. And I need to make that choice myself. And I need to tell everybody in the world, hey, I'm doing this. And then that also segues into the relationship with him and Aaron, where he says, we need to consummate this finally. This can't be a will they, won't they thing, because it's always been will they. And I need to, I need to lock it in. Yeah. Will they will. Yeah, exactly. That stuff worked, but I just didn't, like you said, the comparing it to marriage is a little cheesy. You're right.
But ultimately it's setting up this point that this episode is about John making the decision that's been weighing on his mind the whole show, which is, do I go home or do I stay in space?
Right. And he makes that decision.
Right.
He also says in that part where he's telling Scorpius to frell off, he says, I don't want to be another chess piece, which I didn't realize at the time how on point that metaphor was, because of the whole, like, when Scorpius was in his head and they were playing chess with each other, and that kind of, like, chess has been a metaphor for their relationship since he started being inside of John's head, since the early days of Harvey. So I thought that was really well done. But that's kind of like his whole question of this episode. And so we see some other scenes about the Crystarium, and then Dargo's talking to him, and Chiana asks Aaron about the stuff. So everyone's kind of like up to date at that point.
Yeah, so that scene sets everybody up. And then moving forward, Scorpius is trying to broker this deal between the Peacekeepers and John. So he and Sikozu go into the airlock. This is cool that Scorpius and Sikozu are buds, and I think we can kind of talk about them and close out their plot line in a second. But he's making the deal, and he's like, John, explain to me the logic of resisting the Scarens without allies. And basically what John does is he walks up to Scorpius and just boop, puts a little bomb on him. Here's a little bomb on you right there.
Yep.
Just so you can
Here's
have
an
that.
Explosive.
Here's another nuke. And
because we're a bunch of poor people, but we have a lot of nukes. Yeah. I mean, that's what we can make really easy.
And then Dargo says, you two better grab your helmets to Scorpius and Sikozu, basically saying, like, they got to get out of here. He says, Captain Braca, here's the deal. We've attached a bomb to Scorpius and we're leaving. Follow us and the bomb explodes. Once we're gone, the bomb will shut down. Couldn't be simpler. Don't bother responding. We're not listening. Boom. Get it. Bust him out the airlock. Mic drop. Sikozu shouts, weak species. Scorpius says, I see reason has fled them all. Kind of a cool little final goodbye between those groups.
And the weak species is a pretty cool deliberate callback to the unrealized reality also.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, when I heard that, I was like, I know I've heard this before. And then, yeah, that's what that was.
And then, yeah, you had a constellation of doubt moment where you were, like, meticulously rewatching all the episodes.
Yeah, I watched the whole series again. I wish I could, but it's not that easy to stream those anymore when this episode comes out. Ugh. That's such a bummer, man. That's my favorite NES arcade game, by the way, is Bummer Man. Is that if I finish this show and I want to go back and watch favorites, it's like, nope, not easily, not very illegally.
I'm sure it'll be back up there at some point. You know yeah, how Netflix these things come and go.
That website's pretty finicky, and they're what's it called? Like they waffle on what stays and what goes a lot. It's all rights nonsense.
Anyway, so we bust Scorpius Sikozu out. Bye-bye. Starburst away. By the way, coolest, we both knew it was going to happen. Like, we both were charged with energy from that scene, and then Moya was starting to starburst, and we both knew that the theme song was going to kick in, like, right then, and it did.
Theme song.
It was so good.
That is the best cold open ending ever.
Perfectly timed. Oh, man. Anyway.
You know what this episode has, Magellan?
What?
This episode's got good timing.
Yep, you're right.
It really
It
does.
has really good timing. Yeah. So boom, they're out of there. Let's cover what happens with Scorpius and Sikozu and Brekka. There's like 2 more scenes with them throughout the whole episode. The first one, they're like hanging out, very cool lighting, drinking a little vino, and like, yay, they'll come back. They're gonna work with us. Then John almost works with them and doesn't. We'll talk about that whole thing in a second. And then the second scene and final scene of the series involving Scorpius, Sikozu, and Brekka is perfect.
It's incredibly perfect. It's too good. They just, oh my god, break it down for the listeners, Magellan.
Yeah, so Scorpius hanging out. He's got cool shoulder pads. He's got a cool leather face. He's got Sikozu on his lap. Like, hey girl, what's up? So you got Scorpius. He's a cool guy. He's got cool shoulder pads, cool leather face. Great. You got Sikozu sitting on his lap. Sikozu has cool red clothes. Fit in very well with the color scheme of the Peacekeeper ship. A lot of this episode was really gorgeous, but the color scheme and the framing of these scenes specifically I thought was really powerful. So Sikozu's sitting on his lap. She says, "To victory over Scaran domination." Scorpius says, "To you for your bravery." And then Sikozu says, "For resisting the enemy?" And he says, "For not resisting your friends." And he puts one of her fingers in his mouth, and then he
yum yum yum
jerks the chain that's around her throat. She gasps. Cut to Brekka behind a window. Yes, just watching.
Pretty much nonplussed, but definitely satisfied in some profound way. Like,
yeah.
That is such a beautiful, perfect scene. Like, I love Scorpius. I love the whole sexually dominant nature of his character and of the Scarans and all of that. I love his relationship with Brekka because it's weirdly believable and it's weirdly queer for a show that's full of so many straight relationships, even though it isn't textually like that. And we also know that Sikozu is great because her whole character arc was about finding the place that she belongs, like everyone else on the show. Mm-hmm. And she realizes, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. I want my finger in this guy's mouth. I want him to take control of me, and I want to be his right-hand gal. You know? Like, the finger thing is very deliberate also because we learned that she can, like, regrow fingers. So she's like, just take it off. Like, she's basically like she can just let him bite it off, Yeah. And so she's like accepting. It's like a very consensual moment of dominance. And then we cut to Brekka and he's like, I've done my duty. My boss is happy. I'm a happy, consummate peacekeeper. Life is good. So whether or not that's like him, it's like almost voyeuristic. It's almost a little bit of not jealousy. Definitely not jealousy. But like, I have done right by my boss. Yeah. And I've given him the thing that he wanted.
You really understand that, like, Brekka's getting so much more pleasure from this than he did whenever Grayza was, like, kissing on his face.
Right. He doesn't need the reward himself. He just wants to see the people that matter to him be happy.
Which is such a good scene. Oh, my God.
And a good send-off for now.
An amazing send-off. No other characters in this episode get such a pure send-off as this gang.
We never need to see these folks again and we could be satisfied.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure we will see them, which will be great.
Yay.
Anyway, let's move back into the ep.
All right.
So here's the plot deal. We're on Moya, and it's like, okay, the Scarans might get there. Oh, John, pilot, why aren't we starbursting? John, Captain Crichton, Bubba, whatever I call you. We have to starburst 3 more times. We're gonna have to super starburst or something. Great. Do that, pilot. Thanks.
That is definitely a narrative moment more than it is a mechanical moment. Because, like, we talk about translator micros. We've been doing that since the start. We don't talk about the mechanics of starburst that much. But if it was just a point-to-point hyperspace warp, what would it takes 3 starbursts to get there even mean? Like, what does that translate to?
I mean,
because you were saying, like, that suggests direction.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're traveling to a certain place, I guess it just means that they can, like, jump fast for a bit. So it's kind of like they're going at light speed or something. Like they're doing a big speed boost. That's sort of the closest thing I've got.
But then it's also just like an excuse for them to go, no, now we need to do the real, like, ultra starburst, which is, it looks the same visually. It's just a, like, blue light encompasses Moya, our favorite bean ship mom, and they beat the Scarens to Earth.
Yeah. So because they had to do that because the Scarens were going to get there first. Okay, fine.
Yep.
I'll buy it. We'll move past it because it's just an arbitrary moment of arbitrary rules. Then John's like, hey, pilot, I got this great idea. I think I know what we can do here. Because he's belaboring and trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? The knowledge is in here, but it's all mixed up. And he just can't figure it out. Dargo and Chiana come to visit him, and they're like, I know what you can do. Chiana's like, have sex. And Dargo's like, oh, wait, hold, Chiana, stop it. And then Dargo's like, hey, John, by the way, you made the right...
Isn't that the moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, that's just the moment where I was like, yeah, she says have sex. And then John comes in, and I was like, wait, John and Dargo?
Yeah,
and
they
then,
like look at
whatever.
each other a little. Then Dargo's like, hey, John, you're making the right choice. Yeah, the Peacekeepers would have helped you, but they also would have then turned around and enslaved your planet. So just so you know, that's true.
Good work.
Then John flamethrowers this whole thing. Oh, and then he talks to Aaron. Okay, I'm like rushing through some scenes. But then he talks to Aaron. He's like, Aaron, I can't figure it out. And then they have a little sexy repartee. Aaron says, I was looking for you in the maintenance bay. I liked your solution. And then it flashes back to like 2 minutes ago when he put the thing on fire.
Remember that classic scene?
John says, like that, did you? You have any home remedies for writer's block? I know you better than that. John says, I'm going to fail. It's a sin, really. I'm close. There's just not enough time. Aaron says, it's always about time. John says, yeah, time. Timing. Love you. Don't ever change.
It's cute as heck.
And that's really what that sums it up, right? That they love each other so much, but it's just always wrong. It's the wrong moment.
There's always circumstances, there's timing, it's all about the title of this episode. It's always been bad timing for them, because they could just have the perfect, most beautiful relationship if they could just be together and have nothing come in the way. But alas, there's always something.
That plays into their such a beautiful exchange of lines later on when they're about to collapse the wormhole, which we'll get to. Where John says they're doing this and that it's possible that like maybe they're about to die. Who knows? John says, you know what scares the hell out of me? From the first moment I laid eyes on you, I could never see the end. And Aaron says, what scares me is I always could.
That was a scene that got me a little bit.
That choked me up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. It's just like, thank you, Farscape creators, for giving me a relationship that held up until the end of the show and didn't pull a castle and like dangle it over my face, or like a Bones for like 10 seasons and then do it. It's just like, no, this is always right. This was always
they've like loved and lost and had rocky times and gotten back together.
Yeah, it's like a very real story of relationship.
Yeah, and I mean, it did kind of blow for most of season 4, but we finally got to a place that's cool.
Well, yeah, what I'm getting at is more just like they never gave up. It didn't end with them being like they never like saw other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that's true. There was never like kind of a weird jealousy phase thing. Is that what you're saying?
So that's why when they did try to show that stuff, like when he would like flirt with his Earth girlfriend, it'd be like, oh come on, you didn't do this before Farscape. Like they would like hint at that stuff, but they never had like a John cheated on Aaron plot or anything like that.
Or like a John's new girlfriend kind of plot.
Yeah.
Or an Aaron's new boyfriend plot.
Hinted at it plenty.
Yeah. I mean, they did plenty of that stuff when they hadn't really gotten together, like with PK Tech Girl or with Look at the Princess and all that. But that was fine because they hadn't really gotten together yet. Aaron inspires him. Here's the plan. They're going to go back to the wormhole. And he's talking to Pilot at this point. He says, Pilot, here's my plan. Wormholes, before they form, create a bubble of pressure. And nobody can see it. Pilot's like, I can see it. John's like, okay. Anyway, I can kind of smell it.
Good.
Cool. Now we're there. They create a bubble of pressure. And my theory is that if you bust through that bubble right before the wormhole opens, then you'll collapse the wormhole behind you. Pilot's like, that's brilliant. That's amazing. I love that plan. John's like, yeah, pretty good plan, huh? And Pilot's like, yeah, the only problem is your shit-ass species can't see stuff quick enough to do anything about it. Sorry.
Your eyeball refresh rate is only 60. You need that minimum 144.
Anyway, wish I could help. Sorry. And John's like, I
guess that's it. I like that scene, by the way, because it does the thing where it's like John has a plan, and you expect Pilot to immediately be like, John Crichton, I always do Scorpius. So we always do Scorpius when we're trying to do Pilot.
Surprisingly similar
he's like,
cadence.
Yeah, totally. He's like, John Crichton, that is bad for XYZ reasons. And then you're like, all right, we got to work out those reasons. This time he says it, and then Pilot's like, good. Wait a minute. Like, it's like 2 steps removed from the typical, like, here's an idea, it's bad. It's like, no, it's good, but you can't do it.
Right.
And then you immediately were like, dude, are they going to put Pilot in a thingy, in a ship?
Yeah. Well, that's the great thing about it, right? Is that finally John's coming up with a theoretical plan, like a scientifically based plan that is very smart and will work. But he has to reckon with his human limitations. He has to rely on his buddies. And we got a great character moment from Pilot, because we see, like, there's stuff that Pilot's really scared of, that Pilot is, like, not necessarily willing to right away put his life and Moya's life on the line.
Right.
And that he's really conflicted about it. But finally he does the right thing and flies the little thing.
Which involves them very violently cutting him out with, like, some of the most agonizing screams from Pilot. Great job on Lonnie Tupu's part in that moment.
And
just like...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Nope, you go ahead.
And everybody has their little role to play in this, because Naranti is cauterizing or just putting, like, gel on the exposed parts of Moya to keep it moist so they can reattach Pilot. Stark is there screaming and getting upset and then not getting upset with Chiana's help.
They spent a lot of this planning phase being like, what's Stark doing? Cut to Stark. Anyways, which is like, Stark never changed.
Yeah.
Good.
Chiana's premonition power that I so loathed when it was first introduced gets a high stakes moment where Stark is going to have to be piloting Moya because he piloted Talon, so he kind of knows what's going on there. And Pilot's teaching him all this stuff that he has to do just to make sure that there's still air inside the ship, basically.
Right. Just basically make it run enough.
Yeah. And Stark's freaking out because it's too much. So Chiana's like, it's cool. I'll slow it down in my mind eyes and then tell it to you. So she does that. Pilot's like, cool, thanks. And she says, yeah, no problem. Also, I'm permanently blind now.
I knew it was going to happen.
It had to happen, them setting it up. It had to happen at some point.
It's basically a Chekhov's gun of her saying, even back in a Prefect Murder, like, hey, I keep doing this. And that guy's like, you're stupid. And she's like, why? And he's like, it's going to never go away at some point. She's like, it's fine. It's probably going to go away, isn't it? And then it goes away. So Chiana's blind forever.
Yeah. Then also, hey, Rigel was the one who convinced Pilot to do the right thing.
They have been very lightly seeding a Pilot-Rigel relationship for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was a good payoff moment where it was like, wait, who got him to do it? And Rigel? Really?
Yeah. There's like a lot of... there's actually a lot of trust between Pilot and Rigel, which is awesome.
Absolutely. They're like the 2 oldest people on the ship,
Yeah.
Probably, if that math adds up.
Something like that.
So they're wonderful. And that is their plan to blow up a wormhole.
They put Pilot inside of a transport pod, and it's time to go.
And we're going to go and do a Moyabag, and then we're going to be right back to discuss the rest of Bad Timing. Hello, ScapeChatz listeners. This is Alan bringing you the Moyabag for episode 47 of ScapeChatz. This is the segment that we all know and love. It's where we read your feedback. It's great. It's a good time. Magellan's editing this episode, but I'm doing the Moyabag because, frankly, I felt like it. And we haven't done Farscape stuff in a while. We've kind of been on a little personal hiatus between finishing the show and watching Peacekeeper Wars, which we have not watched yet. But we're going to soon. We just have to kind of get a bunch of life stuff in order and carve out some time to record. But it's going to happen. And I'm going to start by reading your feedback on Twitter over at ScapeChatz. And Static Dax comments,
I put a shot to your system.
You were curious about the reference of the potential title Poison Harvey. I believe it's a play on the words Poison Ivy. I didn't even vaguely pick up on that until I read it out loud, and now I feel very stupid. Thank you, Dax. You're the best. A lot of the tweets that we got this week actually were from a bunch of other Farscape podcasts and associated Twitter accounts that started a conversation, I guess, with some of the creators of the show and people that are on the show. So we're just like in a gigantic group message with, let me pull out one of these. Anthony Simcoe, a Harvey 2.0 account, the Frelcast, Farscape Friday, the Henson Company, Rockney O'Bannon, BenBrowder.net, Farscape TV, Watch Farscape. And in that giant thread, we actually got mentioned with a GIF from actress Gigi Edgley, who played Chiana, interestingly enough. It's a GIF from the film Elf, and it's just the I love you, I love you, I love you scene. So, Gigi Edgley, if you're out there, we love you too. Thank you. Wow. And then there was a bunch of retweets on all that, and then everyone was freaking out, and I believe she also sent us all big love XOXOXO. So, Gigi Edgley winning major points in the Farscape Twitter fan base for replying to all of us with those kind words. Matthew Vandiver, who was on last episode, said, if you haven't been to my YouTube channel, you may get a laugh out of my only Farscape music video, which I will throw in the description of this episode because it's a good time. Also, thank you again, Matthew, for being on the show. We love all of our guests, and you were great. E. Lee Zimmerman says, gave you folks a sci-fi shout-out right here, and they link us to a post on sci-fihistory.net, where they basically talk about how they don't really listen to a lot of podcasts, but they decided to get into ScapeChatz, and they like it. So if that led to more people listening to this, and if that was sort of good for anyone else, then thank you, because that made me really happy. I love that people are sharing the show, because we've said it before, but the Farscape fan base is small but strong, and we have the numbers and the potential to be very big, and I don't know, it's those kind of little things, like those little blog posts where people shout us out, that I always love. It makes me very happy, so thank you for that. Technically, we only got one email this week. That was it for Twitter, by the way. We got one email this week over at scapechatz@gmail.com. I'm not even going to read... Oh, okay. I'm just going to read the text of it. I think it's just from a spam account. Occasionally at scapechatz@gmail.com, we get some weird spam emails, or just like nonsense, like missent stuff. This one just says, can we really talk is urgent, with an ellipsis at the end. Yes, we can really talk. We really, really can talk. And I understand that it's urgent. This world is scary and difficult to live in sometimes, but, Farscape is where we can all really talk. Finally, we have the Reddit thread, as usual, over at reddit.com/r/Farscape. And we're going to start off with our usual big, fun, lovely comment from Blue Blaze Spear. Who says, I totally agree with you about part 1 being the fluff in this trilogy, referring to the We're So Screwed stuff. If I recall correctly, during my initial viewing, it was an embarrassingly long amount of time before I realized they weren't even on Katratzi, and I was like, what's so great about this place? It might have been better to deal with that episode more like A Bug's Life, where it was more like a piece of a story in spirit than actually being linked by title. Yeah, the part 1 is such an enigma to me. Like, why does part 1 of We're So Screwed need to exist in the fashion that it does? They move on. All of the elevator stuff was great. I have to think that the set they built for this trilogy cost a fortune, but we don't see that many different areas. It makes sense to use the elevator for all it's worth because it's really just a tiny room, yet it manages to imply a large sense of scale to the space. It was clever to have drawn-out scenes in the elevator because it was a space where drama can happen, all the while implying that this place is so large that it takes a good chunk of time for the elevator to reach anything. It was an interesting scene to have Scorpius' plan to destroy the flower fail and watch him have to deal with failure, while deflatedly swinging his gun at the flowers and essentially throwing a tantrum. Unlike Moya's crew, this guy clearly doesn't have to deal with setbacks to the plan all that often. I like to think that Scorpius has dealt with failure a lot, but he's usually been better at handling it because he can blame other people. But this is just like he's blaming, I guess, bad timing, if you will, and just like on misfortune. It's like not in his hands, and that's a lot of the reason why he gets so impotently angry at the flower being shielded. Because it's the last thing in front of the thing he wants the most, which is to destroy the Scarans, and it's just a simple shield that they put up that he can't take down on his own. Since you've seen bad timing, I feel it's safe to go ahead and point out how such a throwaway line from this trilogy could play such a big role in the next episode. John offhandedly recognizing the flower had him unwillingly put Earth in danger. I like when they have touches like that. That is a good point. It's like a random comedic line in We're So Screwed, and then it turns out to be the entire crux of the series finale, which is perfection. Finally, they say, don't get me started with how the Sci-Fi Channel dealt with canceling Farscape, and then went about trying to wallpaper over it with the public. I remember being outraged when all this was going on, and I can still easily summon the anger I felt towards the channel for how they handled it. I remember those 4th season ads so well. Sometimes it was like they were advertising a different show, which was bad, but not nearly the sin they were committing by trying to use the mid-season break to imply that there was a sort of 5th season in the second half of season 4. And the crazy thing was some people bought it. I found myself on various sci-fi message boards arguing about what the term season meant, and it got so out of hand that I started saying that the initial agreement was for 44 episodes instead of for 2 seasons. We had to clear this hurdle of mutual understanding before we could get to the part where the channel was being incredibly underhanded in its advertising. I can't even. This is a really great little bit of thread that I'm not going to read all of because there's just a lot of comments in here from Bacchus Manakis. Actually, I'm going to read the Bacchus Manakis quote because it's fantastic. I will often dance with my wife while in an elevator, even a floor or 2 trip. She never watched Farscape originally, and we watched this episode recently. When we got to the part with them dancing, she asked, "Is that why you dance with me in elevators?" My reply was, "Just wait until we're in a field of flowers in an underground bunker." Hashtag BRCA Lives Matter. Oh, I assume you're that person from the Twitter. Good stuff. That's really cute. That's really, really cute, and I love that. Crackers Don't Matter says having Farscape ripped away from us is what left an emotional scar. And then they also bring up a person who goes by the name of Barry Diller. Now, I'm sure plenty of the Farscape community has heard of this gentleman. I had not before reading this thread. Apparently, Barry Diller was the network head of Sci-Fi and a lot of channels when Farscape was on, and he was a big reason that it didn't get to go on for as long as it was supposed to. That's what we need. No Farscape and more crossing over with John Edwards. If I had a time machine and a crowbar, Barry's shins would have had an unfortunate accident. I already own a crowbar, so 1 down, 1 to go. Jeez, that's a lot. That's some salt right there. And then Blue Blaze says, I've intentionally avoided the name Barry Diller because it primally taps into my nerd rage whenever he gets mentioned. You probably shouldn't hand control of a sci-fi based TV station to a guy who goes on the record saying he doesn't like space shows. What you get is a sci-fi channel full of WrestleMania and John Edward and reality shows. And then Trelanis, who I think is Matthew, says, I never knew the name of who to blame for this. So I ended up doing a little bit of reading on Barry Diller, and I was really fascinated by like how one man has become the sort of like figurehead and the demon that everybody hates and blames for the canceling of Farscape. It's possible. Network TV is a really fascinating entity, and in terms of secondary sources, I definitely, in regards to this stuff, recommend the book Desperate Networks by Bill Carter. It's a really long, really fascinating look at the sort of like history of early 2000s network television and how a lot of that stuff changed and warped around the times and the people who were running it and the faces of the networks. But that book is a little bit more positive about some of that stuff. It isn't that cynical. It's more like, you know, Desperate Housewives, that's part of where the title comes from, saved the network. That was on, and Lost. I read it because in the context of Lost, one of my favorite shows. But it's, you know, it's a good book. And if you want to learn more about network television stuff and actually get like hard facts, that's a good place to start. But this Barry Diller fella sounds like a supervillain that we can all blame. Although I have immense faith that in the next like 5 years, we're going to get a new Farscape movie. Every once in a while, we see one of those articles. I don't even know if it's in pre-production yet. I think they're like ready. They've written a script. It's going to happen, folks. You know it's going to happen. And you know we're going to come back and do a new... Even if we're on another show, we're going to come back and do a new ScapeChatz on the new Farscape thing if they do one. It's going to happen, and you should be excited for it. And then finally, just the last comment in here was HJ Wool Wine asking if we can download these episodes. Yeah, absolutely, folks. If you ever want to download these episodes for your offline listening purposes, most podcast apps do that. If you want to download them from the website, there's MP3 links under every episode page on Simplecast. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just, you know, don't use it against us, if that makes sense. Don't, like, download our show and then, like, you know, redistribute it somewhere else because those listens and those viewer metrics matter to us. But regardless, download away, folks. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for the Moyabag today. I really hope you have been enjoying ScapeChatz and you've been enjoying this particular episode, 47, because it's the last single episode or episode discussion that we're going to do for the show. Next week, just to give you guys a kind of little schedule ahead, is the Season 4 recap. And then we're going to start covering Peacekeeper Wars. And then finally, we're going to do a series recap. And that's going to be it for the near future of ScapeChatz. We have some more tertiary stuff planned, but we haven't locked any of that down yet. I know it's like getting there. It's coming faster and faster. But I hope that you enjoyed listening to this. And I'm going to bring it back to Alan and Majan for the rest of their discussion of bad timing. And we're back, continuing to discuss the series finale of Farscape. It's bad timing! And we're getting ready to blow up a wormhole. Oh, God! Oh God.
Oh God.
Can you tell people what that's from? Because we've now done it twice on the show and they don't know what we're talking about.
Really? People are asking about it?
No, but we've done it twice. It's like a running
I don't
thing
know.
now.
Isn't that like a rapper or something?
Oh God. Oh no, it's a thing rappers say. You're right.
There's
I don't even
like
know if it's from
there's
one
like a
particular
specific
song.
rapper that always goes like, "Oh God," but I don't remember who it is.
Yes, you're right.
But I think
Write us in.
it's in Mercy. Lamborghini Mercy.
Oh God.
It's somewhere in there. There's a lot of people in that song.
You're right.
So I'm just saying.
Yes. A lot of things. And there's a lot of people in this episode. Dargo at one point tells John, "You need to focus on your training with Katoya." And it's like, shut up, Dargo. I'm sorry,
Don't
dude.
bring
But,
that
like,
up.
we don't talk about that anymore. Like because they do talk about at the beginning of that episode why they went to Katoya was to protect themselves from scare and mind control or whatever. And it's like, no, shush. They didn't do it. They failed. Stop. Don't try and tell me that. And then it moves on to John working out stuff about the wormhole, and Naranti talks to John. We get a lot of moments of like different people talking. And after the super starburst, John sits with Naranti, and she's like, "By the way, Stark's passed out, and Rigel's continuously vomiting." I just wanted John to be like, Sundays. And she tries to give him a drug, and then Aaron stands at the door with her arms folded like a sitcom mom. And she's like, "John, are you using again?" And it's cuter than that. I'm just kind of being silly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the timing moment scene that you were talking about, actually. Right. I'm kind of rewinding a little bit. What is the next big scene? There's definitely the Scorpius stuff happens in here at some point. Oh yeah, the tape recorder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
John has a tape recorder, which I have this like exact model of tape recorder, by the way. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, I want one.
And it's it's Diane. Yep. But John was like, "Hey, Diane. Look, Diane." Diane. He does the theme song. He does the whole theme song to Farscape, but like he words it differently. So but John, if you want to throw, yeah.
You want me to get it in the transcript?
I have it right here. I just was going to say if you want to throw some fun music behind it.
Oh, yeah.
So you want me to do it right now? My name is John Crichton, an astronaut. 4 years ago, I got shot through a wormhole to a distant part of the galaxy. I ended up on a ship, and at this point I leaned to Magellan and said, right when John said it, "This living ship." Populated by escapee prisoners who became my friend. At which point Harvey interrupts him. And they're in bunny outfits. Like it's just Easter.
Yeah, that was so good.
And John's like wrestling him to the floor, and John's like, "Harvey, why do you want me to fail?" And he's like, "No, John Crichton, I don't want you to fail. I've examined this whole situation, and I think you're going to fail because you didn't ally yourself with the PKs." And then he's like, "Oh, you know what? For you, Scorpius." And then he gives John a chocolate bunny. He's like, "Something or chocolate." You know, like he has that line about chocolate.
John says, "After all that's happened, how do you expect me to trust you?" And then Harvey says, before that, Harvey says, "I've examined this thoroughly from my unique perspective, and I believe your fears are correct. I believe you will fail." So this is when John is thinking about like whether or not he should be piloting the module as it bursts the wormhole.
Right,
Harvey
right.
says, "I believe you'll fail." John says, "After all that's happened, how do you expect me to trust you?" And Harvey says, "Well, I think that, like religion, it's an individual choice. Either you believe, and therefore bunnies are unnecessary, or you don't. In which case, chocolate?"
Which is like, so good. Is it the last time we see Harvey?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, my dude.
Bye, guy.
Bye, guy. Bye, not Scorpius. And then this is a great moment. Gianna's like, "Crane, what are you doing?" He's like, "Change of plan. Gonna try and cut a deal with the Scarans." And they're like, "What? Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." And it's funny because it's like he's totally flipping his thing, but they totally like they're like, "Okay, if you say you want to do it, then we can do it," you know? Or Dargo at least says like, "Are you sure?"
Scary that Harvey still has that much influence.
Because Harvey has influence over John, and John has influence over the crew, so by extension, Harvey has influence over everyone, which is like kind of frail. So yeah, Chiana and John are like, "Why are you arguing about this stuff?" And he's like, "I can't do it, I can't," because he still doesn't think he can do the collapse the wormhole. He says, "I'm not fast enough, I'm not alien enough, and you know what? There are people in the universe who don't like me. I'm only human."
That's funny.
She says, "Frel you," which is good. And then, then it cuts to the Scorpius Sikozu best scene, best. And then we come back to Pilot, and he's just crying.
Yep.
Because he says, Moya and I have never been at greater odds. We've never disagreed so fiercely, which is rough.
Yep.
Because of the whole, like, he never told John at that point that he could totally put himself into the ship if he wanted to.
Right. I thought it was going to be a thing where, like, Pilot was scared and Moya was, like, come on, you gotta do it. But it seems like Moya was scared, and Pilot was like, I have to do it. I don't know which one I like better.
The first one made more sense to how I always thought of Moya, but realistically, the second one is accurate, you know?
Right. So we get...
Pilot, how's this going to work? And then they're going to do that whole thing? Yeah, go ahead.
We get Pilot into the thing, and then it's like, all right, here we go. We bust through the wormhole to the other side, and we end up on... I was trying to do the song from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I just did Star Wars.
I totally knew that you were doing that. Wow, we've known each other for too long.
That song.
Yes. I hope that sync works out in the final episode. 2001: A Space Odyssey, yeah, Stanley Kubrick classic. John is on the moon. He's on the moon.
Cantina Music is the song I'm going to put under you reading the thing from earlier.
Yes. John is on the moon. Whoa.
I know.
I loved I know, I watched the episode with you. I loved that he was on the moon, and the cool thing to me was that you were like, dude, you ever think how weird it is that people were on the moon?
Real Frelling people have stood on the moon.
When our parents weren't alive, or when they were like babies.
Yeah.
And then we stopped doing that, which, return to the moon, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Very deep cut. Yeah, it is profound to me. And that's kind of like the magic of them being back in the Milky Way. Is it's like John has been on a million weird alien planets, and it's like, okay, sci-fi shows put us on alien planets all the time, but when he goes on the moon, there's something like we're attached to it. I mean, obviously literally because of gravity, but it's like that's real. Like I could go there. Right. I know real humans that have gone there, and that's like it holds your breath for a second when he gets on the moon, and you're like, whoa, this is real.
Yeah,
now.
Again, gorgeously shot or gorgeously rendered.
Right. They didn't shoot. I would hope they didn't shoot on the moon.
Yeah, really, really cool set piece and kind of final goodbye. Because it wouldn't be cool if he was able to jump down to Earth and say goodbye. And it wouldn't be cool if he was like floating a little far away from Earth. The fact that he went to the moon, and that was like, because his dad went to the moon, right? So he has this scene where he calls his dad to talk to him.
And it's whatever, we're not going to debate how that works, you know?
Yeah. And it's beautifully symbolic because the moon now is Earth's gateway to the universe. And it's where the two worlds meet, basically. And John is standing on the moon. It's this precipice. It's the place that symbolically he's been for the entire show, where he's like, do I go onward or do I go home? And he's able to look at his home, talk to his dad, and finally kind of put to rest his desire to return to Earth for its own good.
Right. And it kind of like zooms out our human perspective, because John made it into the uncharted territories. He made it into deep space. So for him to come back to the moon, this place that otherwise without Farscape was just like the big goal for humanity for a while, it's like he could just do that. He just did it like pretty easily. He got to the moon with one wormhole, you know? And that's like kind of inspiring that it's like, oh, this isn't like he is so far beyond what used to be our end game.
Yeah.
And that to me, as somebody who very, very, very strongly believes in space travel as a way to progress humanity, is like very inspiring.
Yeah. And it also drives home the fact that John isn't really a human anymore. Like he's not one of us.
Right.
He's now one of them. Fully.
He just hangs out on the moon and like plays with stuff and like picks up the tape recorder and all that stuff. He's not a space boy. Like he's not like an Earth guy that made it to space anymore. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And the prop of the flag that's like stiffly in the no gravity is really great. The idea that his dad clipped a picture to it is so precious and melts your heart.
Sentimental son of a bitch.
Sentimental son of a bitch. Do you want to read the phone conversation between John and his dad?
Dude, I was going to say we should read it. Do you want to be Jack or do you want to be John, my friend?
I want to be Jack.
Okay, fantastic.
So it starts where we're kind of on Earth. We're watching Jack Crichton, and he goes, there's no way that 500 egghead scientists are strapping on a handgun as part of their uniform. So help me out here, Winters. Make all this crap go away. And then there's a phone ring, and he's like, I'm coming. Hello?
Hey, Dad?
John. Where are you?
Serenity Base.
Serenity Base?
Yeah. The moon.
Why didn't you make Earth orbit?
Murphy, Dad, we've got a little problem.
What? Worse than a $300 clipboard that you can put paper in when it's upside down?
Yes. The Scarens have located Earth, and they're on their way.
What can we do?
Nothing. I gotta
What
do
the hell
it.
does that mean? Why do you have to do it? You've already done enough, son.
I'm going to seal up the wormhole. That'll isolate Earth, but it should protect it.
Then how do we get into deep space?
The old-fashioned way. You build a rocket. I've left you technology and navigation information here at your flagpole.
How long do you have? How long do we have?
Not long.
And take me with you. Take us all. We're ready. 500 of the world's best. We can help.
It's just such a good irony moment. He's just on the phone.
Yeah.
There's no time.
What do you mean there's no time? For Moya to get from the moon to Earth? What's it take? A blink of the eye? 2 seconds? Come on, son.
We're down to minutes, Dad. How do you want to spend them?
Son, listen, the Secretary General of the UN, he speaks for the planet on all space matters now. We're starting to come together just like you wanted.
That's good. Keep that up.
I was looking forward to coming with you, boy.
Well, sometimes things don't happen the way you imagine
And then
them.
it cuts back to Aaron's son. She's like, come on.
Tell Susan and Liv that I love them, and I'll contact you if I can. Tell everyone.
I will, son. You tell my grandkids about me.
That's a no-brainer. They gotta know who my hero is.
You're going to find when you have your own, you want them to pass you. Be better, climb higher. I guess if that's the measure, I'm the greatest dad on earth.
I love you, Dad.
You're the heart and soul of my life, son. I love you.
Bye. Weirdly, that got me more now than it did during the episode. I'm like,
Yep.
What is
But-
it about reading that?
Oh man. Yeah, that was the closest to bawling that I got the whole episode, I think.
Totally. It's so, because it's, there's moments in there that I kind of wanted to pause, but I was having too much fun reading it. Like, he says the the eggheads, and he's like, there's no way those dummies. And then he's like, no, we have 500 billion people. Like, we can do it. That's like beautiful human desperation at its best. It's just a lot of Jack's lines, like the clipboard thing is very like, you are John Crichton's dad.
Yep, yep.
That's such a perfect moment of that. And it's just like, we're starting to come together just like you wanted, which is like you said, John is no longer one of the humans. He is the guy that they've been looking up to. Like, if he can do it, why can't we do it? What did he get that we don't have? And they're working towards it. And he says, please continue to do what you're doing, but I have to go. Ugh.
Yeah, and it's a moment of bittersweet agony, but also pure hope that like we're gonna get there, and maybe we will see each other again. And if we don't, like, you've made your mark on Earth, and I've made my mark on space through you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't need to see Jack and John reunite at any point, but we can assume that there is a future, there is a reality, a realized reality in which they meet again, and that's like the best. It's inspiring, just like this whole show is. So now it's time for the end game, man. What a scene.
Yeah, endgame. Okay, so the Scarens are hurtling towards the wormhole. Stalik is hanging out with Akna, and Akna's boyfriend, the weird Scaren with like the cheek sacks, is in a little ship, and he's going for Earth. Meow, here we go.
That's not Gatsby,
Meow.
is it?
No, it's not Gatsby. I don't know what happened to Gatsby, but I don't think we saw him this episode. He's zooming. He goes through the wormhole, or he starts to go through. On the other side, Aaron and John are like, "Hey, pilot, stay awake. Come on, bud. You gotta do the whole plan.
We're not done yet.
We're not done
Wake
yet."
up, you got billions of lives to save.
Pilot wakes up. John and Aaron exchange those lines that we said before, and then puncture it. It was good timing. Oh, good timing. Good job. They go through. They have a weird thing where they like phase through the Scaren.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be like, whoops, now one Scaren like janitor is on Moya. We have to deal with that.
It was on some clock stoppers shit. The like effects, the effects there.
What was the thing in Clock Stoppers that could like counter the time stop? Was it like ice or like nitro or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Everyone should go watch the Nickelodeon Films classic Clock Stoppers. It's required viewing.
That's a great.
I had a Clock Stoppers watch from Burger King, by the way. Anyways.
Nice. They go through, the wormhole starts to collapse, kills this Scaren guy. They get to the other side, and then they get on Moya and they just burst the heck out of there. They're like, see ya. They land on this water planet, floating in the water planet. Cool, very cool.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath.
In the water planet. And Chiana's like blind, bummer. Everybody else is having a good
Aw.
time. People are hanging out on Moya. It's like, yeah, cool. John and Aaron are out in the water in like a little dinghy, and it's made of wood and looks like an earth boat, and nobody's gonna explain that to me, but okay, that's cool.
I'm out of questions at this point, man. That's the only way that we could take the last episode of this cast is like, just, they have a boat.
Right. So they're on this boat, and they're kind of talking, trying to just settle their whole relationship.
Yeah.
And eventually John's like, hey, can I ask you something? Aaron's like, hold on. Let me say something real quick. I got the baby going. Got a surgeon doctor to make it move. So now we're having a baby, and it's your baby. Well, it's your clone's baby, but we're not going to talk about that plot anymore because it's just going to muddle things up right now. It's your baby.
It's yours. It's his. Come on. It's his.
Yeah, emotionally speaking, it's his.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Yay! But that was a scene at the end of part 3 of We're So Screwed that we didn't talk about.
We forgot to talk about this. It was such a weird moment where I think because we were wrapped up, it's the same time as John's talking to Greza and doing the whole thing about like, oh, you're frelled, huh? You're screwed. Having his victory lap, where Braca and Aaron walk out of the room and they're walking away. And then Aaron's like, I'm just going to dip into the medical area. And Braca's like, what are you doing? I'll go with you. And Aaron's like, no, it's sort of like a lady thing. And Braca's like, oh, yeah. No, you should, you do that. I'll be in the lobby waiting for you to figure that out. Aaron's like, yeah, cool. All right. So, yeah, I'll see you in the lobby. Cool. And it turns out she went to the doctor to get her baby okay.
Yay!
We're having a baby.
Wow. Where were they? That was on Katratzi.
Yep. Well, yeah,
so
it was the command carrier orbiting or like docked to Katratzi.
So what doctor there would be like, hey, who are you? Wouldn't they like wonder who she is and not let her do
maybe
stuff?
She just said she was like a soldier on the ship, or they knew that she was with John Crichton and that they had some kind of immunity. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's totally right.
So I think it's chill. So she's having a baby. It's great. And everybody is standing in Moya watching through the window. John stands up and is shouting, and Dargo's like, he's really mad, which is cute.
Because that scene is predicated on Dargo and Rigel are explaining what's visually happening to Chiana, because this is the moment where Chiana's blindness gets to pay off in the last scene of the show. It's like this like comedy of errors where they're like, here's what's happening, and they're trying to narrate it to her, but they're getting it completely wrong, but she gets it because the blind woman can see better than the people with sight, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, what's going on? And he's like, now John seems very angry, as John's like flipping the universe a finger and dancing and being like, we're going to have a baby, that whole thing.
And then John asks his question by getting down on his knees. Dargo's like, he's getting down on his knees. And Chiana's like, oh, and he's like, oh, and he just put something on her, like a ring. Chiana's like, a ring? Didn't you watch any of those Earth movies? It means that they're getting married. Wow.
And then I think this is Rigel's maybe last line of the whole... Yeah, it's Rigel's last line of the show. Marriage? Idiot. Oh.
It's so great. And then...
Yeah.
Very subtle thing, Rigel like kind of sidles out of frame, and it just leaves the camera on Chiana and Dargo for a second, and then it cuts back to whatever Aaron and John are doing. But it's kind of like, oh, what about these two?
What are they doing?
These two lovebirds. What's up with them?
They don't have a concept for marriage.
Yeah, so, no, they do. It's a tattoo thing, remember?
Oh, yeah, it's a union tattoo. You're right.
Tattoo. Oh, boy. So, hey, that's it, man. Right? It's great.
That's the show. Yay! Everyone, thank you so much for listening.
They're going to get married. They're having a baby. Everybody's happy. Chiana's blind, but we'll figure it out. We're going to go see a diagnosing about it in a couple minutes. It's great. Nothing's wrong.
Tracker scouts were correct. 1 Leviathan partially submerged. 2 invaders have exited their ship.
Wait, what?
Request orders. What? What?
Hold on.
Do you have target acquisition? Positive. I scan no armaments. Neutralize invaders for analysis. Acknowledged. Neutralization run beginning.
What's happening?
No! And then Dargo's like, hatch doors are open! Hurry up! And Aaron says, you and your timing. John says, I love you. They hug each other for a final kiss. The mysterious transforming face CG nonsense pilot takes aim and fires, and they are destroyed. They are turned into Dippin' Dots. They are turned into particles. They are neutralized as they stand and turned to dust.
No.
John and Aaron are dead, and the television show Farscape ends on a long shot. Well, it ends on a shot of Dargo screaming no, very Chewbacca-like, because he's just lost his boyfriend and his boyfriend's wife, my wife. And one final shot, just to really just twist the knife. It's a shot of the ring on top of the dust of John and Aaron's bodies. Because they're dead, and that's the show. That's the whole show. There's no more Farscape for us to watch.
Continued, it says.
It says, but hey, see you in 2 years, am I right?
Okay, Alan, what if I told you?
Hey, what's up?
Like, okay, this is the end of the show.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Let's pretend we know that nothing is ever going to happen again that would have any more Farscape in it, ever.
I would be really disappointed. I would be like, this show had so much potential and all of it is wasted in its ending. I would be incredibly bummed out and angry.
But what if it ended with them being like, we're going to get married, and then the camera like slowly tilted upwards into the blue sky? Would you like that?
That's too easy.
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying, right? This show, and this is kind of a theory that we've been positing as we've been watching season 4 and the whole show really, which is like, hey folks, this isn't a show with happy endings. This isn't a show where they kiss and then it cuts up to the blue sky and then there's a heart and then Dargo and Chiana like put their hands together and maybe they're going to get married too. It's not that show. It is a show about people who are constantly beset by the inevitability of conflict. Who are constantly trying to avoid conflict via communication and teamwork. And when they finally do it, when they finally are separate from everyone, they have enough time and their timing is good, and he gets the ring and she says yes, she's going to tell him about the baby's name, which is like Kevin or something. That is the moment where they are beset by utter chaos,
by just a nonsense alien that's head expands. Like they were like, what's this like most batshit alien we can put in this cockpit?
It's so scary because it's just like, it really, the way I felt while watching this was like exactly, I was right in there with Dargo and Chiana. Like everything just looks fine. Definitely. And I like, even though Majan and I obviously know that Peacekeeper Wars is a thing that happened and the show didn't get to end properly, I know that, I was still able to put myself in the moment of like, what am I looking at? What is this? And I was telling John, I'm like, am I supposed to know what that alien is? Was this something I missed? And he's like, no, just, that's it. That's it. And then the show ends
this is
on that moment of like, what? That's Farscape.
Honestly, I might just be able to say this because I have the luxury of knowing there's more Farscape. I think that is an appropriate series finale moment.
It's really dark, but yes.
I think like Dargo screaming no is very dark and over the top and melodramatic. But in the abstract, the idea that we have this perfect moment where finally John and Aaron are in love, they're together, they're not going to have any more problems between the two of them. That's all you need to see of John and Aaron. You don't need to see them like live happily ever after, because you know that they will. And you know that they love each other, that they have lived happily, that they've overcome the circumstances and adversity, and they've made this pure, enduring thing together. And then you have the moment where they're killed, sure, but the ring is there to show that even in spite of all this chaos, they endure. And that there's something transcendent about this love between a crazy farm boy from some backwater planet and soldier girl who grew up thinking that love was never a thing. That there's something amazingly profound about the way that they feel about each other that isn't going to be destroyed by anything, no matter how crazy that alien is.
And like amongst the dust arises the ring. Like it's a very corny moment, but it's so perfect at the same time. It totally works as a like poetic finale. Yeah.
And it also, these characters have come back to life. Aaron's come back to life in some way before. It's not a wild stretch of the imagination to think that somebody could get a dustpan and pour them into a machine that brings them back to life. You know what I mean? To me, it doesn't feel like we've killed these characters. It feels like this is the definitive end of the chapter that you will see. And in some way, these characters are going to live on, either in your mind or like in their world. They're going to just keep having ridiculous adventures. And even if we're done with Scarens and Peacekeepers, we're going to have these guys show up and they've got 3 eyes and their heads widen. That's Farscape, man. You're not going to see everything that happens in this Farscape universe. You're just seeing like the most formative and relevant chapter.
That is such a good point, and that is what I kind of like slept on the night after we watched this, which was a couple nights ago. And it was just this like line that kept running in my head over and over again was, here we go again.
Yeah.
Because TV so often these days is obsessed with closure and making things feel done. And I know people are going to tell us the production team at this point, most, they wrote To Be Continued for a reason. They didn't ever intend for this to be the end of a show. They planned for many more seasons, but this can work on its own. This, like, if you can trust that the viewers understand that, like, hey, in this world, death by particle cannon or whatever, it really doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. What matters is what happened in that final scene, which is that they realized that death is coming again, and they kissed, and they said, that's our final shot.
Yeah.
And that realization is the climax of the show. The fact that they die, that they quote die, and it's like they don't even try to like show like burnt corpse. They don't try to show something that's like very clearly evocative of like permanent death. They show them getting like particleized, like they get them turned into like tiny little beads, which is like just confusing enough that you're like they're gonna do something with that.
Them like it's very ceremonial,
right? And it's like
and it's not, like you said, it's not a haunting image of permanent death. It's a very it's a very hopeful show. It's this hopeful image of permanent love that we see.
It's ashes. It's rising from the ashes.
Yeah, exactly. And here we go again. I think that's a great way to put it. But also you can think of it as like, you never know when your life is going to end, right? Like none of us are ever going to die at the perfect moment, where everything culminates beautifully. We're going to die at a time that is going to feel inconvenient, right? It's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel like we never had enough time to do everything that we wanted to do. And the only thing you can really do in that moment is to say, here's what I was able to look at and love at the very end. This shows like that seizing and pure love and joy in that final second shows that my life was worth something and that I did something worth knowing about.
If anything, that final shot and that final scene on the planet is the closest thing that John and Aaron are ever going to get to a wedding, because all of their friends are there. Pilot is happier than he ever was going to be. They're all watching and they do the ring, and it's all like, what would happen if John and Aaron had a wedding? What would it be like? Here's what it would be like. They would kiss and then they would get shot and killed. That's actually what would happen, because space is bananas.
Well, I mean, we literally had an episode where John imagined that exact thing in Dog with Two Bones. And
exactly. But the difference is that in Dog with Two Bones, he was beset by the people that he already knew and not by chaos, and he was beset by his mistakes. Like, that's what killed him, And also that is very clearly like a violent death. Whereas this is like a holy, like, burning of the ashes and a preparation to go somewhere else. It is not.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, I understand that a lot of people were definitely unhappy with this ending and were, like, mad and sad and cried and wrote to the creators. But, like, this is how things go sometimes. This is, like, a very real way for things to go. And I appreciated that about the episode a lot. With that in mind, we need to watch the movie.
It also feels kind of like the end of Angel a little bit, if people have seen Angel, where that show doesn't end happily. It ends with the team, the Angel team, in an alleyway with like swords drawn and all of hell opening in front of them. And they look at that and they're like, all right, well, here we go. We're going to fight this fight. And that's the end of the show. And you don't see them fight the fight. And that's what this feels like. It's like, well, that's the next alien thing we got to deal with. Let's figure this out.
What could this fun be? Right.
And that's really cool. I think that's really an awesome way for the show to end.
So in that way, it's almost like the cancellation and the awkwardness of this episode's role in the production served its benefit in terms of being like a poetically beautiful ending to
Yeah,
show.
I mean, if I was watching it live, I would have been devastated and upset, and I am a little bit, but I can rationalize why it works.
Right. And definitely that ending was a huge engine for the fan campaign that led to Peacekeeper Wars being a thing that was created. Peacekeeper Wars is for the fans, by the fans, that kind of thing. Magellan.
Yes, sir.
Can you do me a
I
favor?
would love to do you a favor.
Can you do me one last favor? Actually, there's background... Oh, no, there isn't background information for the movie. Okay, Magellan, this is the big one. This is your last time. Can you read me the background information from the Farscape Encyclopedia Project?
I'm like getting butterflies right now.
You can do it. This is the big one.
Background information. The original title to this episode was No Turning Back. The title was changed after news of the show's cancellation. No Turning Back is also a very good title for this episode.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
The montage at the beginning of the episode featured 4 frames from each episode up to the finale in the producer's preferred viewing order, instead of the customary "and now on Farscape" that usually follows recaps. Browder says, "and finally on Farscape."
That got me a little bit.
Yeah,
I was like,
me too.
Ouch.
Small goof when John... Okay.
Weird
guys.
episode for that term. Okay.
Small goof. When John connects a rope to his harness before opening the airlock, it can clearly be seen that the carabiners have not connected properly, and one is just sitting precariously on the other. Yeah, okay.
That's good.
The Kujagon was an animatronic puppet. That's the alien at the end. If the show had continued to a 5th season, plans were to have some of the Kujagon be puppets, others humans. This one was voiced by Ben Browder.
Ben killed himself
Yep.
in the show.
The radio issuing orders to the Kujagon pilot belongs to the first assistant director, Michael Ferranda.
Nice.
Kent McCord's scene was filmed while he was in Australia filming Kansas and Terra Firma. Ben Browder's side of the scene was filmed 3 months later.
Oh, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that they weren't talking to each other.
That like breaks it a little, but it also makes it more impressive, I think.
That it works so well? Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I guess maybe they didn't have Ben Browder off camera talking to Kent McCord, but it's not like they never discussed this. I don't know. I'm sure they read it in like a rehearsal or something together.
Right.
Anyway, the final scenes with Aaron and Crichton in the boat were filmed on the water near the studio. Nearby apartment blocks were removed from the background by the special effects department in post-production. Cool.
They're just like in a big harbor, and they rented a canoe, and they're like, "We're filming something. We're gonna CG out the world, CG the world out."
For only the third time in the series, the regular theme music isn't played during the closing credits. The silence was to mark the show's passing.
That was a good touch, actually. Yeah.
Brian Henson credits the tireless, unwavering efforts of Farscape fans with motivating the production of Farscape: The Peacekeeper Wars, the miniseries sequel to the series that continued the story and wrapped many of the dangling plot threads unanswered by the finale.
Good. That's what I'm saying. They did it, fans. Good job.
Sakozu utters the line "weak species," echoing the words spoken by her unrealized counterpart in Unrealized Reality. Interestingly, this would not be the only thing that they have in common.
And it's a Peacekeeper Wars spoiler. Do not click it.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, we're so close. I didn't click it. I just saw that it linked to a section of Peacekeeper Wars, and I said, nope.
Sakozu's original makeup is seen for the last time. When she returns in Peacekeeper Wars, her appearance is altered. Cool.
She's going to have blue hair.
Chiana has been permanently blinded by the latest use of her power. Whoops. Despite the opening credits monologue indicating 3 years since Crichton was shot through a wormhole, the scene in which Crichton recites a version of the monologue on screen indicates it has now been 4 years since the events of Premiere.
Oh, right.
Kent McCord makes his final appearance as Jack Crichton. He is the only ongoing character not to appear in some way in the Peacekeeper Wars miniseries.
Wait, that means Bracca's in it? That means Strappa's in it? Nope, Strappa's dead. Damn it.
Yeah, Strap is dead. Due to the DVD release rights in the Peacekeeper Wars miniseries resting with other parties, the 2009 A&E Home Video Complete series box set ends with this episode, and its to-be-continued message. Another company issued the miniseries to DVD. That's always annoying when they're distributed
I'm trying to understand how that reads. Oh, right. Yeah.
Crichton, Aaron, Dargo, Rigel, Pilot, and Jack are the only characters to appear in both this episode and Premiere.
I mean, Jack barely gets it. He's like in there for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like DK is the only character that has been in every Earth episode.
For the UK airing, the BBC considered removing the final to be continued caption before deciding to respect the producer's intentions and retained it.
I guess I would understand why they did that, but people wouldn't expect a Peacekeeper Wars if you didn't put the to be continued in there.
Yeah.
That's Farscape.
Yeah.
That's bad timing. Thank you, Magellan, for joining me for this show, this beautiful show, this amazing show that has brought us closer as friends and brought us to be a big part, I hope, of one of the best communities of sci-fi fans in the world. Thank you for being and sticking with us, and for being in general, just for existing. You are valid, and I love you. With that in mind, we're not done just yet, ScapeChatz listeners.
No,
we're not done. Next week on ScapeChatz, we're going to be doing our Season 4 recap. It's going to work just like it has in the previous season recaps, where we're going to do our best ofs, worst ofs, all that stuff. We're going to categorize the whole season. Then we're going to, at some point, recap Season 4. Maybe we'll do that first. And finally, we're going to do, this is the last time we can do this, definitely, is to make our predictions for what happens in Peacekeeper Wars, that 3-hour miniseries that aired over a year after this episode. And then after that, we're going to watch Peacekeeper Wars, folks, and we got some special stuff planned for that. So stay tuned. This is not the end of ScapeChatz, but it is the end of Farscape the show.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big one. I think it's time to move on to plugs, but before I do that, I also just want to put out another call to action for the people listening. After Peacekeeper Wars, we're going to do a full series recap of the show and kind of like just finally recap our stuff. We aren't going to be having any guests on for the next couple episodes, although if you have an audio microphone or any other microphone, they're all audio. We would love it if you would send us a little clip, like, 10 seconds to like a minute long of, you just want to talk about Farscape, like favorite episodes, what it meant to you, what it was like when you watched it live, anything you ever wanted to tell us about ScapeChatz that you didn't get the chance to say in the comments. Just throw them out there and make them an MP3 file and send it to us at scapechatz@gmail.com in the next couple of weeks, preferably. And we'll try and get those all into some cute little montage thing in the series recap. That'd be awesome. We are nothing without our scuppies. And finally, just to go down the list of plugs, I mentioned the email earlier. We can also be found every week on Reddit at reddit.com/r/Farscape. ScapeChatz.tumblr.com is where you can find us there and ask us anonymous questions. We're at ScapeChatz on Twitter, where I can post live updates about we can both post live updates about the show and kind of interact with the fans in bite-sized format. And finally, I can be found on Twitter myself, personally, at twitter.com/Alan Ibrahim, spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. Magellan.
You can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE.
Wonderful. One last time, this has been ScapeChatz, finding our way home.
Whoa.